Are you ready to retire? Have you saved enough? Retirement should be a time of relaxation and financial security. What if I told you there's a looming crisis that could threaten your entire retirement dreams? In today's video, we're going to be looking at the rising cost of inflation and how it could be sacrificing retirement dreams. Now, inflation, of course, is a measure of the goods that we do have in the marketplace, specifically measures the cost of goods and services increasing over time. Now, going back to the 1990s, where inflation was running about 2%, everything was good. You could kind of count on a certain increase every single year to cost. But then we fast forward to 2022, where inflation was running north of 8%, which means cost of goods have went up. Now, inflation can affect a lot of things. When you think of the price of milk going from $2 to $4, eggs going from, $4 to $10, which is kind of crazy. This can have really two effects. Number one being the cost of inflation, meaning that goods and services are just getting more expensive. And also, if there is supply and demand with certain products, if there is disruptions within the natural shipment and receiving of goods, it can affect it. Now, there are a lot of things that can sacrifice retirement, and inflation is one of the biggest ones. Now, the cost of retirement and living in retirement, again, when you go to Social Security, when you get into a fixed income, it is exactly that. It is a fixed income. And I see individuals that are doing well in retirement because they planned, they had the compounding interest. But we've also seen a lot of individuals where retirement at this point, 6-7 years into retirement, they don't have any money. And I want to go through some of the reasons and some of the really pitfalls that I do see with this. Now, at a 2% inflation, when you think, let's say your monthly expenses run $5,000, next month or next year, it's going to be $5,100. Following year, it's going to be $52,200. There is going to be kind of a snowball effect with the 2% inflation. Now, the problem with this is when you start getting to 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8% inflation, the cost of particular goods go incredibly high, and it also goes in conjunction with supply and demand. Some of the biggest things when we look that are very vulnerable when it comes to retirement, the first one is housing. Over the last couple decades, housing costs have risen very, very sharply. If you own a home, if you paid off your mortgage, you're safe from them. But if you're renting, if you're looking at assisted living, if you're looking in the city, if you're paying for a house currently, this is one of the biggest things that I see is when an individual is going into retirement ages, when they're no longer going to be working, when they're getting to that fixed income, if they're carrying a mortgage, it is detrimental. When you look at Social Security, if you're getting $2,400 a month, most housing expenses, when you start looking at the numbers, are $1,000 to $1,200 on average, which means almost 50% of your income is already spoken for the housing mortgage. Essentially the mortgage cost with the fixed mortgage that you didn't pay off for retirement. Then you compare that with energy and food. We have seen energy and food has went up a lot. When you look at insurance costs up 40%, energy costs up 30%, food prices rising 30-40%. When you're on a fixed income, this makes a huge difference when you're in retirement. When you look at imports as well, this is a really big inflation indicator. You will see the cost of goods in the marketplace go up for anything that is imported. And of course, if you're looking to travel, we've seen this with airlines where price for airline airfares were just through the roof, so much that people weren't even flying because essentially as the price of inflation goes up, the price of fuel goes up, everything kind of increases, making it more expensive. Then we look on the other side of the savings and Social Security. Now, most retirees have a couple different sources of income at this point. Number one, Social Security, which again, most people are very reliant on, but hopefully they have a savings account. We have some 401k plans in there, possibly a pension plan. Now, unfortunately, with pension plans, they are going away pretty fast. So I feel like in the probably next 10 to 15 years, most of the employers are moving over to the 401k plans and they're not utilizing those pension plans. But looking at the savings, this is cash or cash-like assets. When you look at checking, when you look at savings, when you look at your CD accounts, this is really the monthly budget in the money coming in, money going out. Now, one thing to remember with this is, again, with inflation, your money isn't buying as much as it used to, meaning that if you're in that set income, you're not able to buy as much as you did. Low risk investments when you're getting in retirement, this is assets like bonds and annuities. A lot of people hold and own these bonds and annuities because they don't want the market fluctuation. Where if your market's down 20%, you don't want that investment portfolio down 20%. They're not willing to give up all of the growth. We're looking for a slower growth, and they don't want to sacrifice potential gains because they still do have time to go ahead and let that grow. Now, the high reward investments, this is another one where if you're buying index funds, I absolutely love. I feel like when you're getting into retirement, even when I am in retirement, I am going to hold index funds. Not only the cost being incredibly low, but also seeing a good growth factor in there with mitigated risk kind of across the board. Then, of course, you do have Social Security. Now, Social Security, each year they do an assessment. It's called COLA, or the cost of living adjustment. This increases the benefits of all the recipients that are getting Social Security, which again is kind of a way to fight inflation. So how do we really address it when you're in retirement and you're looking at your income, you're looking at your expenses and your investments, and the money is just not there? Number one, managing all of your investments. This is a huge one. Inflation adjusted annuities, which of course we would see an increase. S&P 500 index funds, which I absolutely love, short-term bonds, and then cash correlated assets like REITs that are going to give you a regular income. This is the reason why a lot of people do love a lot of the dividends when they get into retirement, the annuities, the REITs, because what they're essentially doing is supplementing the income that they used to have before retirement with money that is coming in to cover those monthly expenses. Getting paid on a quarterly basis, getting paid on a monthly basis makes a big difference with those assets. Now, overall, stocks, REITs, they usually kind of grow with inflation. We can see the prices for different companies keeping up with inflation. Short-term bonds mature every few years. Really don't recommend them, especially because as inflation continues to go down, the bonds are not going to be as much. Looking at the second one, managing and budgeting costs. This is, again, one of the absolute misses that I see. The biggest issue we see with retirees, like I had mentioned, is the housing costs. If you're going into retirement and you're carrying a mortgage, chances are you are going to be very cash flow negative, or it is going to be incredibly difficult. So the cost of housing over the last decades has absolutely soared, and it doesn't show any time that it's going to honestly stop or slow down. Even looking at the people that are renting, when you look at the cost of rent in a footprint, we're talking $1,400 for a one bedroom, $1,850 for a two bedroom, and even higher depending on where you're located in the mortgage. If you plan to have your home paid off before retirement, it will be incredibly intuitive, because if that mortgage is completely paid off, you only have kind of the maintenance costs, the taxes, things of that nature at that point. But if the fluctuation in budget, if a lot of things get more expensive, if inflation continues to increase in the energy and the food sectors, as well as a bunch of other areas, you're not going to be as targeted by it or really have quite the impact, because you don't have that big home expense that we see. Overall, the bottom line, inflation will eat away on your retirement savings. More important to build a retirement plan that anticipates the cash flow. Again, we talk about cash flow because a majority of people that I see are really cash poor when it comes to retirement, meaning that they can cover their expenses with what they have coming in, but it's kind of a balancing act on week to week or month to month. And this also speaks leaps and bounds because I see a lot of individuals that go and buy expensive vehicles, or they do, a lot of things in retirement. People overall retire with about 150K, which I think is on average. Kind of crazy to think that that is a number that is that low when it comes to retirement. So you're going from a full income, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, into retirement income with Social Security. When you look at supplementing that income with some of the 401k plans or some of the pensions, a lot of times we can't make up the difference in there. Make sure you're running your numbers. Make sure you know exactly if you're on track for retirement. But guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.